Have you been noticing more problems with your outboard engine fuel lines? We sure have. Hi, I'm Carolyn Sherlock, and on this episode of the Boat Galley Podcast, I'll tell you what we found out about newer fuel lines, the problems they can have, and what we did about it. Now, this episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by Yugo. Yugo's the only waterproof floating phone case using dry suit zipper technology. Invest in your safety, because if you don't protect, you can't connect. Your phone is fully functional and there's plenty of room for your keys, cash, and cards. To get the only dry bag on the market with 0 phone fails, visit yugoware.com. Seriously, this is what I use, and it protected my phone when I fell in the water. Yugo, prepare for adventure. Okay, what is causing the rise in outboard fuel line problems? We've had problems with 2 hoses in the past 3 years. That's pretty high. Well, let's start by recognizing the problem. A blocked outboard fuel line prevents fuel from getting to the motor. It generally starts with a partial blockage, where playing around with the fuel hose and pumping the primer bulb will get the motor to start or keep it running. But blockages don't cure themselves. In a few days, squeezing the primer bulb does less and less, possibly getting to the point where there is no resistance in the bulb and it doesn't expand when released. When this happened to us recently, the solution was pretty simple: a new hose. Okay, I was curious about what had happened, both basic curiosity and not wanting to have continued problems. Dave, my husband, began by trying to blow through the old hose. He couldn't in 2 out of the 3 sections. That confirmed a blockage. Well, 2 blockages, 1 in each section. The first cut end of the hose that I looked at didn't seem to have a problem, but the second one that I looked at was funny. It looked like the inside of the hose had been melted and twisted. It turns out these new hoses have a non-permeable liner, and it can break free or delaminate from the outer hose and twist itself up. I didn't see that liner in the first bit of hose that I saw. I wonder where it went. Well, I split the hose lengthwise, and basically the liner appeared to be totally wadded up, just in a knot in the middle of the hose. No wonder fuel couldn't get through. And as we kept cutting different places, we kept seeing problems. Well, in talking to clerks at the local Napa store, West Marine, other cruisers, and some outboard mechanics, it seems that we are not alone in our outboard fuel line problems. Now, for the record, the hose I'm talking about was made by Outboard, and it's not quite 18 months old. We've used non-ethanol gas more often than not, and when we've used gas with ethanol, we used a gas additive as well. I don't remember the exact designation of the hose, but I remember when buying it that it was supposed to be okay for use with ethanol gas. Now, what I've learned, and all of this is word of mouth and anecdotal, all fuel hoses have more problems than they used to. Ethanol gas causes more fuel line problems, but using ethanol-free gas is not a guarantee that you won't have problems. New hoses have an impermeable liner to keep ethanol from degrading the other hose material. That liner can delaminate from the outer hose and cause blockages. The hoses with the gray outside coating, which is UV protection, seem to have more problems than others. And the Outboard brand hoses seem to have more problems than some others. They had at least 1 recall of hoses due to delamination of the inner liner causing blockages. OEM hoses seem to last longer before showing problems, but they're not free of problems. Automotive fuel hose doesn't seem to be having the delamination problem, but it doesn't have the UV inhibitors and may crack from UV damage. And when putting a hose with the liner on a barbed fitting, you have to be very careful that the liner doesn't separate as you're putting it on the barb and wad up. It may still do that on your own, but you need to be careful not to add to the problem. Now, our solution was to get automotive fuel hose. Since it doesn't have UV protection, we may try to cover the exposed portions of the hose with tubular webbing or even just some tubes made from old t-shirts to give it some UV protection. We're still kind of working on that. But the bottom line, however, is carry replacement fuel hose with you and fuel clamps. There is basically no surefire method to avoid problems either with the liner or with UV damage. Either type of hose can have a problem. Well, I hope that's helpful to you and that you don't have any problems with your fuel hose. But thanks for listening to the Boat Galley podcast. Help others find us. Write a review today.